The 10th winter took the miller's youngest before the frost even reached his door, and I carried the boy up the black hill myself, because there was no one left strong enough to help me dig. The ground did not want him. It had not wanted anything in 10 years. My spade rang off it like off iron, and I broke it against the frost and used my hands, and my hands were in Alpha King's hands, so they did the work the spade could not. I laid the miller's boy in the shallow bed I had torn open, and I looked at the row of stones beside him. 40 stones, that hill, 40 since the first snow, and I did what I always did on that hill. I promised them spring. I promised it the way a man promises a thing he has stopped believing in, because the promise is the only warmth he has left to give. Then I went back down to Sunderhold to see who else the night had taken. You have to understand what 10 winters without a spring does to a land. It does not kill it all at once. If it killed all at once, there would be a mercy in it. Instead, it takes the orchards the first year, and the wheat the second, and the deer go north the third and do not come back. And by the 5th year the springs under the hold run thin and taste of rust, and the pups, we are wolves in Sunderhold, wolf-blooded, pack-born, the pups come fewer every season, and smaller, and some come not knowing how to shift at all, and you tell yourself it is a hard patch, a long cold, that the wheel will turn. And then the 10th winter comes, and you are standing on a black hill with 40 new stones, and you understand at last that the wheel is not going to turn, that something broke it, that you are the king of a country that is dying under you one grave at a time, and you do not even know its true name. I was 31 years old that winter, and I had been king for 9 of them, and I had not seen a green leaf on a living branch since I was a boy. My father died the spring the frost came, the spring that did not come. I have wondered 1,000 times whether the two were the same wound. He went hard at the end, my father, gone strange and gray, and full of a guilt he would not speak, gripping my wrist on his deathbed and saying only, over and over, I did not know what she was, until I thought it was the fever talking. He never told me what he did not know. He left me the frost and the guilt and a crown that had gone from a thing of honor to a thing of duty, and duty in a dying land is just grief that has learned to keep its feet. So that is the man I was, the night she came to my gate, a tired king on a dead hill, out of orchards, out of deer, out of spring, down to 40 stones, and a promise he no longer believed. I did not see her arrive. I heard of it the way I heard of everything, from Osric my steward, who came to me in the low hall with his hands full of the ledger of who we could still feed. A girl at the west gate, he said, in the flat voice of a man who has had to turn away too many. On foot, no packmark, no kin here that anyone knows, half frozen, wants shelter. He did not look up from the ledger. We've barley for the hold and no more, my lord. One more mouth in the 10th winter is one of ours gone hungry. I've told the gate watch to send her on toward Highwater before the light goes. Send her on. Toward Highwater, which was 2 days' walk across the ash meadows in a killing wind, which was a thing you said to a person when you meant let the cold have her but could not say it to a king's face. I do not know to this day why I stood. I had turned away wanderers before. The 10th winter makes hard men of kind ones. I had learned to sign the death warrant of a stranger with a nod and go back to my barley count and hate myself later where it did not cost the hold a meal. I should have nodded. I meant to nod. Instead I said, bring her to the fire, I'll see her myself. Osric looked up then, and there was something almost like reproach in it, the reproach of a good steward watching his king spend what they did not have. But he went. And I stood by the low hall's poor fire. We burned the orchard dead now, the wood of trees that had been fruiting when I was a child, and it burned fast and gave little heat and smelled of every summer I could no longer remember. And I waited to look at the face of the girl I had just decided not to kill. They brought her in wrapped in a wet gray cloak with the snow still melting on it, and she was so cold she could not stop the fine shaking of her, and her lips had gone the color of the sky before dawn. She was not a great beauty. I want to be honest about that, because the songs they will make of this will lie, and I would rather you have the truth. She was thin the way the whole world was thin that winter, with a plain, patient face and rough dark hair and hands red and cracked from the road, and she stood in my hall dripping and half dead, and she did not beg. That was the first thing. Every soul who came to my gate in the 10th winter begged, and I did not blame them. Begging is what the cold leaves you. She did not. She stood shaking in front of the king, who held her life in his nod, and she looked at my fire, not at me, at the fire, and she said, in a voice cracked from the wind, "You're burning pearwood." I had not expected that. "We burn what's dead," I said. "I know." She was still looking at the fire, and something moved over her face that I did not have a name for, a grief too large for a stranger to spend on my hearth. "I'm sorry for it, that's all. A pear tree takes 30 years to give, and it burns in an hour." She seemed to hear herself then and to remember where she was, and she looked at me at last and dropped her eyes and said, "Forgive me. I'm cold and I've no manners left. I only want the corner of a warm room till the wind drops, and I'll go. I can work for it. I'm good with growing things." Good with growing things. In the 10th winter of the frost, when nothing had grown in the Sunder Vale in a decade, she offered me that as her worth, and did not know how the words landed in that dead hall, how 3 of my people by the fire turned their faces away, because good with growing things was a thing you said in a country that still had a spring, and we did not, and it was like a woman offering to teach swimming to the drowned. I should have felt the cruelty of it and sent her to the kitchens and forgotten her. Instead I felt I did not know what I felt. A pull, faint, under everything, like the first give of ice you're not sure you heard. I put it down to pity. I am telling you the truth. I did not know her then. My wolf did not rise, did not howl, did not do any of the grand things the old tales promise. There was only that faint give, that not quite sound, and a tired king too worn to trust it. "Give her the corner by the ovens," I told Osric, "and a bowl of the barley, one." I looked at the girl. "What's your name?" "Eloan," she said. Eloan. It sat oddly in my mouth, older than the names we gave our children now. "Sleep, Eloan, the wind will drop by morning, then we'll see." She bowed her head, and I saw her mean to thank me and find no strength for the words, and she let them take her toward the warmth. At the door she stopped, though, and turned back, and for one moment she was not a half-dead stranger but something steadier, something that looked at me and passed me both. "You've a hill of new graves outside your wall," she said quietly. "I saw them from the road. I'm sorry for your dead, my lord. I know what it is to bury a green thing before its time." And then she was gone into the kitchen dark, and I stood a long while by the pearwood fire, cold in a way the fire could not touch, and did not understand why the tired grief of a starving stranger had made the ground under my own 2 boots feel, for just a breath, less far away. She did not leave in the morning. The wind did drop, as I'd said it would, and Osric came to me expecting to be told to put her out, and I found I could not do it, and I told him she could stay and earn her barley in the kitchens, and I told myself it was because we were short of hands, which was true, and not because of the give of ice under everything, which was also true. I did not think of her again for 4 days. I had a country to bury, and then on the 5th day one of the pups, little Bram's daughter, the smith's girl, 6 years old and born the 2nd frost winter, one of the ones who had never once in her life seen a leaf, came running into the low hall in a state I had not seen a child in for years. She was laughing. I did not in that first instant know the sound. My people did not laugh in the 10th winter, and their children least of all, because a child laughs at a world it trusts, and there was nothing left in the Sunder Vale a child could trust. But she came flying across the hall to me, this pup, and she seized my hand in both her small ones, and she said, "Come, my lord, come and see. The strange lady made a green thing." I let her pull me. I did not believe her. Children see what they are starving to see. I thought she'd found a bit of moss, a lichen, some gray almost life scraped off a north wall. I let her pull me out the kitchen door into the ruin of the old hold orchard, the one nearest the walls, the one I could not look at anymore because it was where my father used to lift me to the low branches when the low branches still bore. Aloan was on her knees in the snow at the foot of the oldest tree in it. A pear tree, the last standing pear, the mother of all that dead orchard, a great gray twisted corpse of a thing that had not fruited in 10 years in wood. I had told Osric only that winter, come down for firewood in the spring. She had cleared the snow from its roots with her bare red hands. I saw the small mad labor of it, and something in my chest turned over. She had been bringing it water. Warmed water, from the kitchen, cup by cup, in the 10th winter, when water was rust and rationed. She had been spending her own barley strength carrying warm water out into the killing cold to pour on the roots of a tree everyone else in the world had given up for dead. And at the foot of the dead pear, where her hands had cleared the snow and warmed the ground, there was a shoot of green. One shoot, pale, no longer than my finger, curled like a sleeping thing, pushing up out of the black iron ground that had not permitted a single living green thing to rise in 10 years, that had wrung off my spade like stone not a week before. One green shoot in the 10th winter of the frost, at the foot of a dead tree, under the hands of a nameless maid. I have led warriors. I have held a wall against a raiding pack with an axe going dull in my hands. I have carried my own dead father up the Black Hill. I did not know, until I stood in that snow and looked at that one green shoot, that I had forgotten what it felt like to hope, and that the remembering of it would go through me like a blade, that it would hurt, that hope in a dead country is a wound, because it opens up everything the numbness had let you carry. Aloan looked up at me from her knees. There was snow in her rough dark hair, and her hands were bleeding from the cold in the clearing, and she did not look triumphant or proud or like a woman who has done a miracle. She looked frightened. She looked at my face, and whatever she saw there made her go pale, and she said fast, low, "I didn't, my lord, I didn't do anything wrong. I only warmed the roots. My mother taught me. When a tree's asleep and not dead, you warm the roots and speak to it, and sometimes it remembers. That's all. I didn't mean any harm." "Speak to it," I said. My voice did not sound like my own. "Yes." She looked down at the shoot as if it might vanish if she took her eyes from it too long. "My mother said the old wood in the deep places listens, if you're of the right blood and you speak to it kindly. She said our people used to keep the whole land that way once, warming the roots and speaking kindly and grieving it when it needed grieving." A small broken laugh. "She said a great deal, my mother. She's 10 years dead. I never knew if any of it was true. I saw the dead orchard and I couldn't bear it, my lord. A whole orchard let go. So I did the one thing she taught me, on the one tree, because a body has to keep one green thing alive, or what's the use of being alive yourself? Keep one green thing alive." The same words the puppet used, made a green thing. I stood in the snow of my father's dead orchard, and I looked at this maid on her knees with her covenant in her cracked hands, and did not yet know it was a covenant, and the ground under my boots, I swear this on my 40 stones, the ground under my boots was warm. Not warm as a fire is warm, warm as a living thing is warm, warm the way the flank of a sleeping wolf is warm under your hand in the dark. The ground of the Sunder Vale, that had been iron and rust and grave cold for 10 years, was warm under the 2 boots of its king, in a small circle around a maid who was good with growing things. And my wolf that had gone silent and gray with the land, that I had half forgotten I still carried. My wolf lifted its head inside me for the first time in 10 winters and did not howl, did not surge, did nothing a song would use. It only breathed. It breathed the way you breathe when you come up out of deep water, as if it had been holding its breath for 10 years and had, at last, at the foot of a dead pear tree, been given leave to let it go. I did not understand it. I want you to know I did not understand any of it standing there. I only knew that something in me had recognized something in her, down below thought, down where the wolf and the ground and the old blood live, and that whatever it was the truest thing that had happened to me since my father died, saying I did not know what she was. "Get up," I said, and it came out rough, and I saw her flinch, and I hated that I had made her flinch. I put out my hand. A king does not put out his hand to a kitchen maid. A king in the 10th winter of the frost does not do 100 things I did in the weeks that followed. She looked at my hand as if it were a trap. Then she took it, and her cold, cracked fingers closed on mine, and the warmth in the ground came up through my boots, and the warmth in her hand went through my palm and met somewhere behind my ribs, and I pulled her to her feet and did not, for a moment, let go. "You'll not carry water in the cold again," I said. "Not alone, not with your hands like this." I turned her hand over in mine and looked at the split skin, the blood gone to threads in the cold, and I heard myself, the king of a dying land, say a thing I had not said to anyone in a decade. "Let me help." I brought the old root mother to see the shoot the next day, because I did not trust my own hope, and I trusted the root mother's plain hard sight more than anything left alive in Sunderhold. She was ancient Mother Sella, root mother, we called her, an old word older than her, for the woman who kept the pack's long memory and the rites we no longer had the spring to perform. She had buried 3 alpha kings. She had known my father when he was a pup, and she did not fear him or me, and when they carried her out to the dead orchard on her chair and set her before the one green shoot, she looked at it for a long time and did not speak, and then she began, very quietly, to weep, and I had never once in all my life seen the root mother weep. 10 years, she said. 10 years I've prayed to be dead before I saw this land die, and I outlived my prayer, and now—" She reached out one shaking spotted hand and did not quite touch the shoot, as if afraid to. "Where did it come from, this green?" "The maid," I said. "Eloan, she warmed the roots. She says her mother taught her that her people used to keep the whole land this way, warming and speaking and grieving the wood. She says it as an old wives' thing. She doesn't know what she is." The root mother's head came up so fast I feared for her old neck. "Say that again." "She doesn't know what she—" "Not that." The old eyes had gone terrible and bright. "Her people, her mother, 10 years dead, is her mother. Ask her no." She gripped the arms of her chair. "Havard, bring the girl. Bring her now, and stand where I can see your face when she speaks, because there is a thing your father did, boy, a thing I swore I'd carry to my grave for the shame of it, and I think the God of the deep wood is not going to let me carry it any further." They brought Eloan. She came frightened again, twisting her mended hands, looking from the weeping ancient in the chair to her king to the shoot she'd woken, sure she'd done some terrible thing. And the root mother looked at her the way you look at a face you last saw as a child, and asked her, gently now, gently as I had never heard the old woman speak, "Child, your mother, what was her work before you came to be born, before the frost? What was your mother, in the years when this land was green?" And Eloan, bewildered, said, "A warden, my lady, of the wood, that's what she called it. A warden of the heartwood, she said her mother was, and hers back and back. She said we kept the covenant. But the covenant broke when I was small, and she never spoke of how, only that we'd been cast out of some place we belonged, some green place, and we walked, and she got sick on the road, and she died, and I was 6, and I don't, my lady. Why are you looking at me so? What did I do? I only warmed a tree." The root mother put her face in her hands. And then she told it. She told it to the whole dead orchard in the 10th winter, before her king and the maid and the pup and the frost, the thing she had sworn to carry to her grave. And I stood, as she'd asked me to, where the shoot could see my face, and I learned at last what my father did not know that he had done. There had been a war, the root mother said, when I was a boy of 20 and Eloan a child of 6, a border war with the Highwater pack, ugly, full of fear, full of the poison that fear pours into good men. And in the last hard month of it, a woman had come to Sunderhold's gate with a small girl and asked for shelter, saying she was a warden of the Heartwood come home, for the wardens had kept a house here in the green years, kept the deep covenant that ran the land's life through their bloodline and the old tree at the vale's center, that so long as a warden lived and grieved the wood and kept its roots, the Sunder Vale would green, and spring would come, and the pups would be many and whole. And my father, frightened, war poisoned, whispered to by men who saw spies in every stranger. My father did not believe her, or would not. He named her a high-water agent come to work some enemy right in his land, and he cast her out. A woman and a 6-year-old child, cast out of the one place their blood was made to keep, in the last month of a war, onto the road to high-water across the ash meadows. He cast the warden out, the root mother said, into her hands, and the covenant broke because the covenant is a living thing and it cannot hold when the last of the blood is driven from the ground it's bound to. And the next spring did not come. And your father knew, Havard, at the end he knew, when he was dying in past pride, that the frost was his doing, that he had murdered his own land out of a fear that turned out to be nothing but fear. I did not know. That was his cry at the end. I did not know what she was, he did not. And I did, and I said nothing, because he was my king and it was done, and the woman was surely dead on the high-water road, the child with her, and what use was the shame of it to anyone? She lowered her hands. Her face was ruin. But the child was not dead. The child walked 10 years and came home to the one place in the world her blood was made for, not knowing it, and knelt at the last tree and warmed its roots and spoke to it kindly, and the wood, Havard. The wood remembered her. After 10 years of death, the deep wood felt one drop of the true blood back in its own ground, and it put up a green shoot to her hand like a dog that has waited 10 years at a door. She looked at Aloan, and the old terrible brightness in her eyes had turned to something like worship. You are the last warden of the Heartwood, child. You are the living key to this whole dead land. You always were. It was never a tale your mother told you. It was the truth of your own blood, and this king's father broke the world by turning it away at that gate, and this king. She turned the brightness on me and it burned. This king has been feeding you barley and burning your orchards for firewood and letting you carry water in the cold with your bare hands, and did not know what he held. The orchard was very quiet. The shoot stood pale and green at the foot of the dead tree. And Aloan, the last warden of the Heartwood, the living key, the blood my father cast onto the high-water road. Aloan looked at me with her mended hands pressed to her mouth and her eyes streaming, and she did not look like a woman who had just been told she was the salvation of a kingdom. She looked like a small girl of 6 who had just been told, 10 years too late, why the door had shut. Then it was you, she whispered, and it was not an accusation, which somehow was worse. Your house, your gate. My mother died on that road because your father shut that gate. She was shaking. I warmed your tree. I carried your water. I was sorry for your dead. And it was your gate that killed mine. And I, the Alpha King of Sunderhold, who had never in 9 years of ruling knelt to any living soul, went down on both knees in the snow of my father's dead orchard in front of a kitchen maid, and I did not do it as a king performing a mercy. I did it because there was nothing else a man could do who had just learned the size of his own house's wrong. It was my gate, I said. It was my father's fear and my house's sin, and I will not hide behind a dead man's guilt. It is mine now. I am the house. Aloan, warden, I cannot give you your mother back. I cannot give you the 10 years or the road. I can only tell you that I did not know, and that not knowing is no innocence, and that from this hour there is not a thing in Sunderhold that is not yours to command, beginning with the king kneeling in the snow. I looked up at her. Cast me out if you will. It would be just. But do not cast out the land. The land never harmed you. The land has only been dying for 10 years waiting for the blood that could wake it to come home. Do not make the innocent ground pay for the guilty gate. She looked down at me for a long time. The snow fell between us. And then this maid, this warden, this heart I did not deserve and had not earned, knelt down too, so that we were both in the snow, both on the ground, king and cast out child level at last. And she took my hands, both of them, in her mended ones, and she said, through her weeping, the thing that undid me entirely. I don't want to cast anyone out. I know what casting out costs. I've paid it 10 years. Her fingers tightened on mine. I only ever wanted one green thing to be alive. I'll wake your land, Havard, not for you, for the tree, for the pups who have never seen a leaf, for my mother who'd have wept to see a whole vale let die, a breath. And for you too, maybe, a little, though you don't deserve it yet. Get up off the ground, kings shouldn't kneel. It frightens the children. That was the moment. Not a mark burning, not a wolf howling, not any of the grand signs. Just her hands over mine in the snow and her saying, and for you too, maybe, a little, though you don't deserve it yet, the honesty of it, the mercy of it, the refusal to let even the man whose house had ruined her turn the ground into an enemy. That was the moment, the thing under everything, the give of ice, the warmth in the ground, the breath my wolf had let go, all of it closed at once into a single certainty behind my ribs that I have never since been without. It did not feel like fire. The songs say fire, the songs are wrong. It felt like the ground remembering how to be alive, like the first warmth going down into a frozen root, like a whole country, and a whole king, coming up at last out of 10 years of deep dark water into air. I got up off the ground. I helped her up. I did not let go of her hands, and she did not take them back, and the pup by the door laughed again, the sound I had forgotten, and behind us at the foot of the dead pair, a second shoot pushed up green through the black iron ground, and a third. It was not simple after that. I will not pretend it was simple, because the songs will, and you should not believe them. A land does not wake in a night, and a heart cast out for 10 years does not learn to trust the house that cast it in an afternoon. And there were hard days between that kneeling in the orchard and the morning the whole vale broke green. The waking of the land was Eloin's own work, and it cost her. The root mother told us what the old rite required, dredging it up out of the deep of her memory where it had lain unused since the green years. That the heartwood, the great ancient tree at the very center of the vale from which all the land's life ran, had not merely slept these 10 years but grieved. That a covenant broken is a wound, and a wound must be grieved before it can close. And that only the true blood, the living warden, could go to the heartwood and grieve it whole, could give the dead center of the land the tears it had been owed for 10 years, and no one left alive to weep. It will take from you, the root mother warned her, the night before. The old wardens gave years off their lives for a hard waking, and this is the hardest in living memory, 10 winters deep. You will go to the tree and you will grieve it, and it will pour 10 years of a dying land's sorrow through your one heart, child, and I do not know what it will leave you. I will not pretend to you that it is safe. Your mother would not have let you. Your mother would have gone in your place. My mother's dead, Eloin said, on your king's road, so there's only me. She said it without cruelty now. The sharpness had gone out of it in the days of the king carrying her water and the pups following her about the hold and the shoots coming up green in the dead orchard faster than we could count them. She looked at me across the root mother's fire. You'll come with me. To the tree. To the end of the world, I said, if you'll have me at your shoulder. Just to the tree will do. But she almost smiled when she said it, and I would have taken that almost smile over any crown in any country that had ever stood. We went to the heartwood at dawn, Eloin and I and the root mother carried in her chair, and a handful of the pack who had asked, weeping, to be let come. It stood a half day into the vale, the heartwood, in a hollow that had been a sacred grove in the green years, and was now a bowl of gray death. And the tree itself was vast beyond any tree I have seen before or since. A wolf hold could have sheltered in its dead roots, and it was gray to the last twig, gray and silent, and 10 years dead at the heart of a 10 years dying land. Eloin stood at the foot of it and looked up the great gray ruin of it, and I saw her be afraid, and I did not tell her not to be, because it would have been a lie. I don't know how, she whispered. My mother never got to teach me the great waking. She only ever taught me the little one, the roots and the warm water. She died before her voice broke. I don't know how to grieve a whole land, Havard. I don't know how. You've been doing it your whole life, I said. I took her cold hand. You grieved your mother on a strange road at 6 years old. You grieved a dead orchard you'd never seen until it made you weep. You told me you were sorry for my dead the first hour I met you. A stranger's dead, 40 stones you'd only glimpsed from a road. You know how to grieve, Eloin. You are the best griever I have ever known. It is why the wood chose your blood 1,000 years ago. I pressed her hand to the dead gray bark. Don't grieve the land, grieve the tree. It's just one tree, warm its roots, speak to it kindly. Grieve it as you'd grieve a green thing gone before its time. You told me you knew what that was the first night in my hall, so tell the tree. It's waited 10 years for someone of the true blood to be sorry. Be sorry to it, that's all. That's the whole right. Be sorry and mean it, and let it take what it needs. She looked at me, and then she turned to the great dead tree, and she laid both her mended hands flat against its gray bark, and she pressed her forehead to it, and she began to grieve. I cannot tell you all of what came out of her against that tree, because it was not for me, it was for the wood, and a man should not repeat what a woman gives to the deep in a moment like that. But I will tell you it went on a long time, and that it was terrible, and that it was the most beautiful thing I have ever stood witness to. She grieved her mother into that tree, the road, the sickness, the small grave she had dug at 6 with her bare hands, the 10 years of walking with no one and belonging nowhere. She grieved the orchard and my 40 stones and the pups born who could not shift and the miller's boy. She grieved the frost itself, 10 winters of it, the whole slow murder of a land, out of her one heart into the heart of the wood, and the wood took it. I felt it take it. The warmth I had felt in the orchard came up now out of the whole dead grove, up through my boots, up the great gray trunk under her hands, and where her tears ran down the bark the gray went. I watched it happen, and I will swear to it before any court of gods or men. The gray went brown, and then it went living dark, and then, high up in the vast dead crown of the heartwood, in the gray light of a 10th winter's dawn, a single branch put out a leaf. One leaf, green, unfurling in the cold like a hand opening. And then it was as if the whole land, that had been holding its breath 10 years the way my wolf had, let it go at once. The leaf became 100 leaves. The 100 became the whole crown, a green fire running up the great tree faster than sight, and the warmth came up out of the ground not in a circle now but everywhere, rolling out from the heartwood across the whole dead vale like the first wave of a returning tide. And behind us, from the direction of Sunderhold, I heard a sound I did not at first understand and then understood and fell to my knees again to hear. The sound of my people, my whole dying pack, crying out all at once. Because they had walked out of their doors into the 10th winter and found the frost breaking off the eaves and green pushing up through the black ground of the yards, and the springs running clear and sweet again after 10 years of rust. The wheel was turning. The wheel that I had stood on a black hill and stopped believing in was turning under my knees. And it was turning because a maid my father cast out onto a killing road had come home and been sorry to a tree. Eloin sank down at the foot of the heartwood. The right had taken from her. As the root mother warned, she was gray and spent and could not stand, and I gathered her up into my arms there in the greening grove, and I was afraid. For one black moment I was more afraid than I had been on any wall in any war, that it had taken all of her, that the land would wake and its warden would not. But she opened her eyes. She looked up at me and up past me at the great tree gone green above us both, 10 years of death undone in a dawn, and she said, in a thread of a voice, the thing I will keep behind my ribs until I die. There, one green thing, a breath, a whole veil of them, her hand found mine. My mother would have havared, my mother would have wept to see it. She's seeing it, I said, though I do not know if it is true, and I have never cared whether it is true. Through you, she's seeing every leaf. The frost never came back to the Sunder Vale. That is the plain end of it, though the songs will dress it up. The spring came that year, the first spring in 11 years. A spring so violent with green after the long death that the orchards fruited twice, and the wheat came up thick as a wolf's winter coat, and the deer came back down out of the north within the year, and the springs ran sweet forever after. The pups born the next season came many and whole, and every one of them could shift, and the season after that, and the season after that. The land had its warden home. The covenant was whole. Sunderhold, that had been dying one grave at a time under a guilty king, became again what it had been in the green years my father broke, a country a child could trust. I will not tell you that righted the wrong. Nothing rights a wrong like that. A woman still died on the Highwater Road, and a child still walked 10 years for a door my house had shut, and no green spring gives that back. Eloan and I spoke of it often in the years after. She would not let me pretend it away, and I loved her the more for it, because a love built on a pretended clean past is built on rot, and ours was built on the true ground, the wrong named and carried and never hidden. I gave the wardens their old house back and more. I made it law, first law of my reign that meant anything, that no soul comes to Sunderhold's gate in cold or need and is turned away. Not in war, not in fear, not for any reason a frightened man can name, that the gate my father shut stays open now while my house stands, on pain of a king's own shame. The root mother lived to see 3 springs, which she called 3 more than she had prayed for, and she died in a green year with her hand in Eloan's, and we buried her in the grove at the foot of the heartwood, which is the only grave in 10 years I have dug in ground that was glad to open. I married the warden of the heartwood in the greening orchard, under the mother pear tree she had woken with her bare cold hands, and I will tell you the truth of that too, because the songs will lie. I did not claim her before a bowing pack, and no scorners ate any reversal, and there was no crown and cloak spectacle of the kind king stage to be remembered by. There was only the 2 of us under a tree that had been dead and was not, and the pack around us quiet and glad, and the pup, the smith's girl, who had run laughing to fetch me to the first green shoot and started all of it carrying the ring, so proud she could hardly walk straight. Eloan wore no great gown. She wore green because she said she'd worn gray enough for one life. When I took her hands they were healed at last, the cracks long gone, warm and whole in mine, and I thought of the first night, her red bleeding fingers in my hall, offering a dying king the one thing she had good with growing things, and not knowing it was the whole world she was offering. People ask me sometimes, the young ones who did not live the frost and cannot imagine it, what it was like, the moment I knew. They expect the grand answer. They expect the mark and the wolf and the fire. And I tell them the truth, which disappoints them and which I would not change for any grander thing. I knew when she knelt in the snow of my father's dead orchard, after I had told her my house had killed her mother, and she took my ruined hands anyway and said she didn't want to cast anyone out because she knew what casting out cost. That was the moment, not the waking of the land, not the heartwood going green. The moment a woman my house had wronged past forgiving chose, kneeling in the snow, not to let the innocent ground pay for the guilty gate. Everything else, the covenant, the spring, the 11 years of green since, grew up out of that one mercy the way the whole vale grew up out of that one shoot. I did not deserve it. She said so herself, kneeling, for you too, maybe, a little, though you don't deserve it yet. She was right. I have spent every green year since trying to become a man who deserves it, and I am not there, and that not being there is, I have come to think, the truest kind of love there is the kind you keep growing toward, like a tree toward a light it will never quite reach and is greener for the reaching. She sleeps beside me now, my warden, in the 11th green spring, and the window is open to a vale so loud with living things that a man who buried 40 stones on a black hill can hardly believe his own ears. I got up in the night, as I still do some nights, to stand at the window and make sure the green is real. It is always real. 10 years I promised my dead a spring I did not believe in, and then a half-frozen maid walked to my gate and was almost turned away, and made a liar of my despair. There is a pear on the low branch outside our window, the mother tree's fruit, the first tree she woke, the one that would have come down for my firewood. I go out most mornings and I stand under it a while before the hold stirs, the way my father used to lift me to those branches before the world went gray, and I put my hand on the warm bark and I am sorry to it still, the way she taught me sorry for the 10 years, sorry for the road, sorry for the gate, and then I thank it, which is a thing she taught me too, that you grieve a green thing and then you thank it, and that a heart that only grieves and never thanks goes as gray as any winter. The pear is ripening. In a week it will be ready. I will pick it for her with my own 2 hands, the hands that dug the graves and could not, that first night, believe in one green shoot. And I will carry it into where she sleeps and wake her with it, my warden, my mercy, the one green thing that made a whole dead country alive, and she will open her eyes, and I will tell her, as I tell her every green morning of my life, the frost is gone. You sent it. It is spring in the Sunder Vale, and it is spring because you were sorry to a tree.